Welcome to this task. In this task today we are going to, as you can see, we have a chessboard before us, and in this task we are going to play the Danish Gambit but from the black's view. So how black is viewing and is being played against strongly by the white pieces. However, we are just going to have the black pieces facing our side. So as always in a chess game, as you can see, we have the pieces arranged in their perfect order. We need to arrange them in an orderly way, confirm that they have been arranged perfectly before you can start. After confirming that they have been arranged, starting from the pawns and the back rank pieces, white always starts the gameplay. So in this gameplay, white will push the pawn that is standing in front of the king 2 steps forward to the e4 square. After they do that, in the Danish Gambit, black pushes the pawn that is also standing in front of their king, and in this case the pawn moves to the e5 square. White pawn in front of the queen moves 2 steps forward, and in this case they are giving the black the opportunity to capture their pawn. This opens up for the bishop and the queen and the bishop also on the dark square, setting ground for the Danish Gambit. The Danish Gambit starts when the pawn is being captured by black. In chess, when you capture a piece, you put it on the side outside of the chessboard. So in this case, black's expectation is to be captured by the queen that is facing it directly, but instead white offers another pawn on the c3 square, and the name c3 comes from this c file and the third rank in which it is standing, so the c3 square. So in this case, black captures this piece and they are now 2 points ahead in material. However, this normally costs black because, as you can see, white is setting proper ground to dominate these open spaces, whereas for black they have only played with this one pawn and not developed their other pieces on the back rank. So in this particular place, it is expected for black to develop their pieces and play something like the knight to that square first. But in this case, if black captures this, then they have entered the Danish Gambit. And in this is the advanced variation of the Danish Gambit from the black's perspective. So in this case, it is important for white to ensure that they don't sacrifice either their bishop on the c1 square or their rook on the a1 square. So the bishop captures that pawn to eliminate the threat on the c2 square, and that becomes their first capture. This gives them an opportunity to angle this dark diagonal, and they have open space to put their pieces across. We have the queen running across this diagonal. We have the other bishop running on the diagonal starting from f1 up to a6. So in this case, the dark knight standing on the g8 square moves 2 steps ahead, trying to capture that pawn. This is normally considered a blunder, as it now falls into the trick of the Danish Gambit. If they try to push it ahead, then the knight goes to the front square on e4, trying to avoid being captured by the white pawn. Remember that this bishop is supposed to be at the c4 square because it is used in the development, and in turn it attacks the e7 square. So in this case we are luring out, or rather we are luring out the king to capture the bishop on f7. Once the once the king has captured the bishop on f7, they place them aside, but now the king has been lured outside. So this gives the opportunity for the queen to come and give a check, and at the same time threatening to capture the black knight. So the black king cannot go back because that diagonal has been captured by the white queen. So they step into the e8 square, and after stepping this, they leave their black knight at the center of the square vulnerable to attack from the white queen, and the queen captures it and puts that as their other capture. So the white pieces is closing in on the captures compared to the black side. If they make the mistake, or black makes the mistake of trying to go after the queen, then they play a move called n% by capturing on the d6 square and capturing that pawn in turn. And this game ends on instant on the line variation of the Danish Gambit. If they sacrifice their queen and you capture with your white pawn on the e7 square, having captured the queen, you're going to be up in material advantage and the black pieces should resign. So it is important to replay it back so that we see the tactics that white has and what to avoid as black, because they're going to lead into this type of setback. So we are going to rearrange our piece again, our board, in the correct order by returning all the pieces where they're supposed to be. And we have the pawn standing on the 7th rank for black. We have the bishops on the F and the C file. We have the knights on the G and the B file, and the queen on the D file. Same case applies for white side. Remember, this is the Danish Gambit from black's perspective, and what to avoid in this while you're playing as black, and what strengths to pick from white if you're playing this game. So it starts with the e4 move, pawn to e4, then they respond with e5. The pawn gives up that pawn on the d file for capture, and the pawn on the e5 captures on the d4, and they put it outside there. They don't capture with the queen, but instead they give another pawn, and that pawn is the pawn to c3. So the pawn that is standing on the d4 square captures this pawn on the c3 square and puts it aside. And in this particular position, black ignores that threat and continues to develop their bishop. Since bishops can move diagonally, they push it to the c4 square, also threatening the piece on the f7 square. Black continues to advance by capturing this, and they enter into the territory of the Danish Gambit. This case, white has sacrificed material advantage to get position and advance their bishop, so they don't blunder their pieces to be captured, but instead they capture on that position there. So at that particular juncture, you're going to find that these pieces have developed. So the next thing that white, or rather black, will try to do is to advance this knight to f6, trying to push this pawn away. But this white pawn will push one step ahead to chase the black knight instead. So the black knight will step ahead to the e4 square, trying to avoid being captured. But instead, white will use their bishop to capture the pawn on f7. This is now their second capture, and it is also threatening the black king into a check. So the black king is lured out to capture that bishop on f7, and that is another advantage for white, for black rather. So white will in turn move to the d5 square, giving a check to the king, and the king cannot go back because that diagonal has been captured by the white queen. So instead they'll have to move to the e square because they don't want to stay so forward on the e7 square, so they move to the e8. Then the white queen captures the knight on the e4 square and puts it aside. So the blunder that black makes is when they try to threaten the queen by pushing the pawn in front of the queen to d5. Then the black pawn will capture that pawn through n% and capture that pawn. So now the king also is being attacked by the queen through what is called a discovered check. If they hesitantly try to blunder and protect with the queen, then you capture with the pawn, and now you are up advantage of the queen, and the board will look at a similar position, and black is expected to resign, and as white you're expected to move forward. And that is the strategy that we have in this task, the end of the task.